Are you tired of the cookie-cutter approach to education that's stuck in the last century? Are you seeking a win-win situation where your family thrives, your kid's education is revolutionary, and you still get to chase your own dreams? Welcome to Unschooled Unleashed. Unlock your child's genius. I'm your host, Matthew Jarecki, an unapologetic rebel dad and promoter of what many consider to be educational anarchy. You know the world isn't going to be won by those that just toe the line. It's the innovators, the visionaries, and the resilient spirits that are going to thrive. Our mission here is to forge those world changers within our very homes with less stress, energy, and time. Unschooled Unleashed starts now. Welcome back to another fantastic episode of Unschooled Unleashed. I'm your host, Matthew Jarecki, and today we're going to talk about two statements I hear very frequently when I mention that I do home education. Those two statements are, one, I don't have the time, and two, I don't have the patience. I'm telling you, I thought the same thing, and that's why I went to work to figure it out. But with this episode, it's going to come with some hard truths. A lot of people, I think, tell themselves these two things, and they're not true. It's just the way you're looking at the situation. Sometimes it is true, okay? And I'm not saying which is which. This is up for you to decide. I'm not giving instructions or judgment or anything like that, but I am going to challenge those two statements. So if that sounds interesting to you, then stay tuned and let's dive in. Today we're going to talk about the myths that time and patience are barriers to doing home education. My goal is to equip parents with the mindset, confidence, and tools, and I would argue truth, that they need to move forward boldly and practically. The first thing I want to talk about is the myth of I don't have time. Now, before I get a bunch of pushback, there are people stuck in some tough situations. That's evident, right? I mean, just a percentage of the population is always in this. Not always the same people, but a certain percentage are in crisis, a certain percentage are in transition, these types of things. However, what I'm talking about are the people that choose to wake up and do the same thing they've always done and then say, well, I just don't have the time. I don't have the ability to do this, okay? That's who I'm talking about. Different choices lead to different results. If you want the same thing everyone else gets, do what everyone else is doing, and you're going to get those results. If you want something different, and I think home education is a different path, then you're going to have to do something different, and you're going to have to make sacrifices. So if you live in a large house, and you got two incomes, you got a couple car payments, you're not out of time. You're choosing lifestyle. That's what you're choosing. You could downsize to a smaller place, and we got a bunch of excuses, that come next when you confront someone with that. Now, I don't often do this because I don't really, I can read between the lines with a lot of this stuff. People are just saying, I can't do this. I'm not willing to sacrifice, is what I hear. Well, I don't have the time means I'm not willing to sacrifice. But they keep on saying this, I wish I could do it. I wish I could do it. If your goal is really doing home education, then sacrifice something for it. Your priorities are where you spend the money. If you want to look at what your priorities are, it's really where you spend your time. But a good proxy for that is where you spend your money, because you're going to spend your time, make money, and then spend your money on that. Now, it doesn't always work that way, and I'm not making a hard and fast rule, of course, but hey, let's run with it, right? This is in general how it works. When you spend your money on things like a car payment, brand new car, you can get by with a used car. There's no reason you need a new car. New cars have problems too. You still have to bring them to the shop. Maybe it's covered under a warranty, but it's less likely to have to break down. But they still have problems. You can get a used car and take it to the shop every once in a while. Actually come out ahead as far as money-wise. Yeah, you may experience that headache more or two, but is that really what's keeping you from doing home education? Is that it? Because me and my wife made the sacrifices. Our cars are now 15 years old. 15 years old. Still running, causes headaches every once in a while. We're going to upgrade soon. but I'm not going to buy new because that's the fastest way to lose your money. Leasing is also very expensive. Although the monthly payment is lower, it's more expensive because it takes your wealth and you don't get anything in return. Outside of you're basically just long-term renting. You don't have a car on the other end of it unless you want to buy it out. These are decisions people make. And I focus on house and cars because those are the two biggest ones. I could go on. I could talk about the vacations people take and how much money they spend on that. I could talk about how much they spend on subscriptions to different things like Netflix, like cable television, like all these different apps that they might have, all these different services that they might want to keep. People spend their money on that stuff quite a bit. People spend their money on eating out, and they eat out 4 or 5 times a week because they're so busy. But yet they don't have money at the end of the month, right? They're it's really funny to me. Some people I talk to, some parents I talk to say, well, we just don't have the time. My wife's got to work. I've got to work. We're doing all this stuff. And honestly, school, it just makes more sense for us right now. Well, then you hear about their lifestyle. You start to dig a little bit. So you don't have the time. Maybe there's some place you could find time. And you start to dig a little bit, and they got brand new cars, big house. They eat out because they don't have the time to cook. They don't have the time to eat or work out as well. They devote their life to their career. They devote their life to having a bigger house and newer cars and vacations and eating out and all this stuff. And they build all these excuses in their head. And it's limiting. It's a victim mindset, in my opinion. High consumption. If you're a high consumer, then you can cut back. That's totally within your control. You got a subscription to Xbox, and you got a subscription to all these different things. Start to cut back. Choose where to spend your money. I used to teach a financial class. I still do, actually, every once in a while. And I taught some of it more recently to high schoolers. So just I took little snippets out to match what we were supposed to be talking about during that session. And one of the things that I talked about is your money is a tool. You can have it work for you or work against you, or, you could just throw it out because people do that. The more you're able to make it work for you, the better. So efficiency is something that I really value. I keep my lifestyle very low. I only spend money where it's impactful, and this is what I told them. It's high impact, things that I really value. If I spend my money on things that I really value in my life, and I cut everything that I don't highly value, then I just opened up a lot of money. I really don't care how big my house is. Not because I don't care how big my house is, but because it's not worth the money for me to go over and get a bigger house right now. Now, we're outgrowing our current house as we speak, and there will be a time for that, but it's not been a necessity. Most families would say it's a necessity when you got 1,200 square feet and 3 kids with just a 2-bedroom. I live in something smaller than that. I don't think it's an absolute necessity, right? And I would rather be able to work as needed in the hospital. I would rather be able to not work at all and just be able to live off one income, which my wife has a full-time job, but she's going to be switching to remote, which fits our lifestyle. These are all things that we're doing to make it all work. Now, we have pursued to get ourselves in a position that we could do that. We pursued this job because there was a possibility of remote. In fact, we went into it and said, if you're not going to make her remote, then we're not interested. But we had that position wasn't created yet, and they're working on it, and it took them a little over a year, but it worked. And they are a little behind our deadline, but hey, we're getting there. I could work full-time hours plus and get a bigger house, for sure. Absolutely, for sure. but it's just not what I value at this time. I value being able to flex my time, spend it with my kids, teach them the ropes in life, and then I want to free them. And I'll get that time to work coming up. I worked a lot of my life. Right now is not the time for it. At least not dedicating my entire life to it. Although I do have stuff that I do, and I can have purpose outside of just educating my kids. And I'm going to talk about how I do that in a little bit to a point. Because, let me dive into it now, because we're talking about I don't have the time. If you have a passion project, if you have a business that they're starting, it's going to require a lot of your time, but home education doesn't require as much time as you think. In fact, if you do it in a thoughtful way, you can actually get more time. But leads us into our next topic. So the reality check, career over kids. It's a choice, not a constraint. So many parents don't like the time. They prioritize their kids' career or their career over their children's education. And this is often unknowingly. They, again, there's nothing wrong with career ambition. Again, I have an entrepreneurial flair. I understand it. And that takes a lot of work and hard effort to get stuff off the ground. When you're at work, if you manage your own projects or are the leader of a project, it's going to take a lot of your time, and it all depends on you. And a lot of us feel that pressure, but us high performers have to put constraints on our times. Otherwise, it grows into something that can consume our whole life. We have to put boundaries around it. Now, you don't have to be firm in saying, like, at 5 o'clock, I stop answering the phone. No, you can have some flexibility, but don't put your career over your kids. I don't think that's wise at all. That's my unsolicited advice. What I would say to people who say, I don't have the time because they want to focus on their career is, are you going to get to the end of your life and think you made the right move? Are you going to look back? And if you can come to peace with that, then go ahead. Maybe you got your kids in a great private school and you're really happy with the results. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if your goal is to do home education and you just are conflicted with your career or your kids, have a conversation with your future self and see where you should put your money, especially if your motives and reasons are strong enough. A little bit of thought might bump you in the right direction. I'm not saying the direction is home education. However, if you really want to do this, you can figure out how to maneuver your career around your life. And if not, then maybe that's not the right career for you if your goal is to really do home education. That's some honest truth. This one might be a little hard for some people. I expect people not to listen to this one as much because of it. People don't like to be confronted with the lies they tell themselves in their head. I can't afford this. I don't have the time. I don't have this. I don't have that. It's a victim mindset. And when you confront it with, well, you could just not go on that Disney vacation this year, and that would give you an extra couple grand. And then maybe if you stopped eating out as much, and you wouldn't have to if you didn't work so much, you'd have a little bit more time. And then you could actually keep your kids at home. And then they say something like, well, I still need them to be watched by somebody. And that's when they're just using it as childcare so they can do what they want. And that's fine. They can do what they want. They're parents. Again, this is not about judgment. It's about coming to reality and speaking truth. People aren't willing to make the cuts. If you really want to do it, if you live in the United States, you could move to a city that's cheaper. You could move, you might not want to, but you could. You could move to a house that's just smaller or cheaper, or rent for a period of time. You could do a whole bunch of stuff. There's a lot of knobs to pull in the United States. Moving on, the world's your classroom, and it's incredibly faster than school if you're talking about learning. So you don't need 6 to 8 hours a day. Most home-educated kids outpace public school students pretty easily in a fraction of that time, because the time that they devote to actual learning is larger in most homeschooling cases, from my experience, than the actual learning in a classroom. So actual learning in a classroom ends up being around 2 to 3 hours, so about 2.5 hours, somewhere around there. That's per day, 180 days out of the year. We don't stop. Since we unschool, it's the most efficient way to do it. We go off interests. We're intentional unschoolers, so I'm exposing my children to different things that I think they might find interesting or useful. And then I try and point out along the way where it might be useful. So that way, eventually they'll come around to hopefully learning it, or at least understand to avoid careers that require whatever skill that they're avoiding. Either way, my goal is to teach them how to learn. So if they need to learn it later, they will. But we don't really, we do school 7 days a week, 365 a year. And when we do actual intentional learning a couple days a week for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours sometimes, we are going to far outpace schools. And when they're interested, they learn so much faster. Don't ever underestimate the power of interest. It's what drives us adults, and when we're trying to learn something, either that or we see a need to learn it, so we're going to put ourselves through the ringer to actually learn it, even though we might not want to. Kids are the same way. Most of the time, it's more of, I just want to understand the world a little bit better. They're curious. Kids are curious naturally, and when you kill that curiosity, that's when you run into problems. So the unschooling philosophy is interest-based, child-led, so we never kill that curiosity. That's our goal. We want learning to be fun. We want them to learn how to learn. We want them to find their fit in the world, what they're gifted at, what their weaknesses are, and then build a life based on that. Maybe they want to improve some of their weaknesses. Nothing wrong with that. Maybe they want to build on their strengths. Highly recommend it. This is the world that you can live in. And I think that the I don't have time excuse is a poor excuse if that's really your goal and if that resonates. There are knobs you can pull. I offer coaching, and that's part of it. So if you're interested in something like that, go to the description section in whatever podcast player you're listening to, and email me and we'll talk. Moving on. Resources, support, and groups make it easier than ever. So in 2025, we have something called the internet. This was not around when I was it was just starting when I was homeschooling. Everything was on paper. Everything was a book. Very rarely did you learn from a video. There wasn't enough stuff out there. You had to learn from a workbook, is how it was presented to me anyway. We did do a little bit of unschooling, unintentionally, and if you ask me, but really everything I learned from was mainly in a book. Now we have the internet. We have artificial intelligence. I just created a project in OpenAI's platform that uses ChatGPT. I trained ChatGPT to be able to teach my child grammar, sentence structure, really everything, language arts, English language, reader's comprehension, stuff like that. I want my children to learn all that stuff, and I'm having a hard time doing it with unschooling principles to a point. It's something that I think is important. They're just not interested in it. Well, all of a sudden, I'm going to create this tool that hopefully makes it interesting, because I also programmed it to be really funny, entertaining to, an 11-year-old. So I'm just looking for new tools, and technology helps me do that. There are other apps that they can do. Khan Academy has pretty much every topic. These are all the things that I can do. Courses online. They can do online learning for everything. Have a remote instructor that they actually meet with, and you can do this with someone who's across the world. It's amazing what you can do now. I always mention my son is in a program called Synthesis Teams. He's learning logic, teamwork, problem solving, all remotely, and he does this a couple times a week, and he gets to make friends with these people, gets to see them every week. It's really cool. There's a link in the description if you're interested. You can get a discount, and I get a little bit of a kickback towards my subscription if you use that link, and I would really appreciate it because it's about $95 a month. They have some deals going on at times, though, so keep an eye out for that. Either way, super satisfied with it. So many different things. If you're not good at math, you can hire someone teach your child math. You could use artificial intelligence to actually do it. I do that with problems I don't understand. I have it walk me through. It's not the greatest at math yet. So, but basic math, it sure does. And there's basic math programs like Synthesis Tutor that I also use to help my kids learn the basic principles. But gosh, sometimes just sitting down with them and doing it myself, that's where I don't mind spending the time. Either way, there's plenty of resources out there. You can rely on co-ops. Co-ops have classes. That's actually where I was teaching high school students as a part of the co-op. I was teaching teens financial literacy. And I mean, there's, learning from other people, getting exposed to new ideas, and maybe a way put that you just didn't resonate before now resonates from this person. Those are all opportunities for your child to grow. And I highly suggest taking a part in those if you can. And there's more homeschoolers than ever before in the United States. When I was homeschooling, we had to have a conversation about what happens if the superintendent or the police show up to the house. It was that big of a deal, and they did. They did. We were able to get out of it, thank God. But wild stuff used to happen back then. Now it's normal. It's part of the world, which is great. Moving on. I don't have the patience. That's the other lie. So we don't have, what people always say is we don't have the time, meaning they're not prioritizing what matters to them, if that's the case, if they really want to do it. Or they have to have an honest conversation with themselves and say, this isn't much of a priority as maybe my career. And maybe that's the wise move. I don't know. I'm not here to judge. But if your goal is doing home education, then saying I don't have the time, I think it's a poor excuse. That's just my opinion. The other one, again, is I don't have the patience. Now, I think this is an honest statement. I don't have the patience either. That's actually why I went over and started looking for more efficient ways to do home education, because I knew I didn't have the patience. That's why I have this podcast is to tell you there's a better way of doing things. Unschooling is that way for me. It's the least effort on my part, the least effort on my kids' part, and it works, and they learn way more efficiently without the stress. It's not that they're learning less. It's just they're learning different things, and I'm okay with that. But it is a fear that they might not learn the right things. But that's where I believe in the philosophy of intentional unschooling. Again, I have a podcast, a whole episode defining that out if you're interested in that. Unlike the time excuse, saying you don't have the patience is a real acknowledgement, right? With the time thing, I think it's just an excuse. It's a lie we tell ourselves to get out of maybe doing that, or maybe we feel trapped and we're believing the lie that we're trapped. It's a victimhood mindset, but this one's actually an acknowledgement. It's I don't have the patience. I'm not ready to be that involved. It isn't victimhood. It's awareness, and I think it can change with the right tools, and that's one part of the reason I made this podcast. Hey, there's a better way out there. I'm not getting on my kids to do their homework. I'm not getting on them to do the worksheets. I'm not getting on them because they got an F. I don't need to do that at all. My kid right now, my oldest, is down there working on his understanding of basic math. My other one is building stuff out of Legos to see how big he can get. And if he had his way, he would be learning how to play the piano, because they're doing that in one of the apps. They're learning how to read music. That's actually both my kids would be doing that if they weren't playing with Legos. This is a great situation, and they could do doing anything they want. I know I'm limiting their screens till the afternoon for the most part. Because I want them to free play. Their cousins are available. Get outside. Go do something. They did. They went out inside and played basketball. Good job. But I just don't like to turn on screens too early. I'm getting off topic. Saying you don't have the patience is a victimhood, or is not a victimhood. It's a statement that's an acknowledgement of truth that you're not ready to be that involved. And if you're saying I don't have the patience, just make sure that's a choice, that maybe you didn't look into every way of doing things. I for sure thought I didn't have the patience to be doing this. My kids are a handful. So are yours probably, right? Patience is going to be required to be a parent. I would say I could not be a parent if I wasn't a parent. I wouldn't have the patience. But I can be. You learn how to adapt. You go over and figure it out along the way. It's kind of how I fell into this. I started reading, finding better ways to do things, more efficient ways, different curriculum models and different philosophies. And this is how I came across I formed my own philosophy on how to do home education. You're going to have to find your own. I'm just a voice. I'm just a guy that's maybe a step ahead of you. Maybe you're ahead of me. I don't know. But if anything is resonating, if anything's like turning on the light, then I'm a step ahead of you in some form. Okay. And I just ask that you open your ears, open your mind to a new way of doing things. If you don't have the patience, start looking for better ways. If your goal is to actually do home education, you'll find it. If your kids are a priority, then you'll find it. Moving on. You don't need to be perfectly patient. You're not managing a classroom. When you're unschooling, and that's what I promote as a form of unschooling, intentional unschooling, you're living alongside your children. You're not forcing them to learn. You're supporting their natural desire to learn in the best way you can by providing resources, by providing exposure, by providing guidance, then showing them how something can be interesting, showing it where it's useful, pointing it out in daily life, having conversations, digging deep, rewarding questions with engagement, right? This is parenting. You're just being a parent, and you're going to be doing that to prepare them for life. Schools don't prepare kids for life. That's the parent's job. And what better way to prepare them for their life than unschooling, having them with you and learn how to do life right alongside you. And don't forget, there's ways you can teach them without being directly involved. You can turn on a screen. I'm not advocating for parenting using screens, but it is a tool. I put on a documentary about World War II or the Cold War or whatever history thing I want, and my kids are glued because I don't use screens all the time. I don't leave a TV on all the time. There's so many ways you could go about things that would really potentially help you. You don't need to have unlimited patience. Get them out of the house. Share, share responsibilities with the neighbor. Whether you watch their kids, they watch yours if they're homeschooling, and get that thing going. You got a bunch of options. Next, intentional unschooling makes patience easier. Easier. I use the structure as a container, not a cage. So we have rhythms, routines to reduce stress. They know they can read as much as they want in the evening, and that they don't turn on screens till later in the afternoon, that they get outside at some point is the expectation, as long as it's reasonable weather. We don't recreate school time. We don't do anything that forces them into something, but we do try and make it a fun day. They learn off their interests. Dive into their interests with them. Find ways to support that. That is the key to success. And just have fun with them. Learn along with them. I don't know everything about the Cold War. I learned a whole bunch. It's a lot of fun. That's what we more recently went through. And then lastly, I want to talk about patience grows when you let go of control. So control creates resistance. So what I want you to do is focus on curiosity, just going with the flow. It creates a flow. That's what you're going to go towards. You don't have the patience. Yes, you do. Because you love your kid. You want to interact with your kid. You want that emotional connection, that relationship with your kid. Zero pressure. Reading a book, diving into something, whatever it might be. Just let go of control. It could be anything. Do something that interests you. That's what I try and do. Otherwise, I kind of go nuts to a point. I do that in short bursts if it's something that doesn't interest me. But there's so many things out there to make your life easier. And education is going to be completely disrupted over the next 10 years, 100%. technology is going to change the face of education, and it's going to be way more efficient. It will not require as much time. We're able to move at a lightning's pace in public school, in my opinion, or the way they currently structure school in public schools in the United States will slow them down, in my opinion. At least the 50% that are above, average. The other 50% are going to get overwhelmed. Doesn't sound like a good deal, but we do it every time, and we always get scared, and then we just resort to what's safe. So anyways, if you say you don't have the time, ask yourself what you're prioritizing. If you say you don't have the patience, know that neither did I until I actually stopped trying to control everything, and I let go, and I went with the flow. You are capable of more than you think, and home education doesn't require your perfection. It just requires your presence. And that's what I'll leave you with today. So with that, I'm going to end today's episode. So stay curious, stay unschooled, and stay away from the algebra nightmares. I'll catch you in the next episode. So here's where we roll up our sleeves and bring out the big guns. If you support our mission, then please leave a review. On Unschooled Unleashed, we are talking about using a radical approach to education in today's world, and the more 5-star reviews we have, the more people will feel comfortable with the ideas, strategies, and principles we discuss. It gives legitimacy to our message, and the podcast's algorithm prioritizes us so we can reach more people. You may even have your 5-star review read on our podcast. Before I let you go, I have to pause and say this from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. Your presence here is the fuel that ignites this movement. I am incredibly moved that you trust in us enough to click play. You, my friends, are the caped heroes in this story, the guardians of your family's learning journey, and a beacon of hope for your community. Be bold. Do what you think is best for you and your family. Thanks again for tuning in and taking this courageous leap outside of the box for this educational revolution. Welcome to the front line.